Hi, this is Rachel, and welcome back to another episode of the Next Row Knitters Club. I hope that you have had a good 10 days since the last podcast, and you've been moving in your life and in your knitting from row to row to row. I have been pretty busy with house stuff again. I am in Texas making a giant life change and moving to upstate New York, and in the process of trying to sell my house here, trying to buy a house there, and all the things in between that entails. So I wanted to pop on. I don't think this will be a long episode. I wanted to pop on because I have finished the little scarf that I had been knitting for a friend of mine, and I want to gift it to her, so I wanted to make sure that I popped on and showed it. It is an interesting shape. It's yet another one of those sort of little neck scarves, but it is very shallow, as many of them are, but also very long, and I'm not sure if this is a length that I would, enjoy or make again. I think the pattern is called Along the Shoreline by Greta Mersen. It is shown in a single color. My friend chose this very variegated yarn, which is a Madeline Tosh Light in the color Bittersweet. I'll try to get it a little closer. It has this lovely, very geometric, balanced dot pattern made with very simple yarn overs. You can see that it's very long. I have one of my little Rachel's Woolen Love tags on there ready for gifting. And I think it is very wearable, particularly in Texas where you don't need anything too heavy most of the year. I think it would be a nice little addition to an outfit. When you hold it back, it does read almost black. It does read as a very sort of dark color, but then as I bring it closer, you can see it has some turquoisey in it, definitely some like coppery brown, lots of purple, and a little bit of gray. So it is a really interesting variegated colorway. Again, she picked it out. Hopefully she will love it. And what else can I say about the pattern? So, as I've said many times, I definitely seem to gravitate not just to gift knits, but also to things that are a bit simple so that I can relax as I'm knitting, since it is definitely a way for me to de-stress. And this pattern you definitely had to keep track of because the dots all need to line up, and it would be pretty easy, I guess, to get off. But having said that, it's super simple. The pattern is beautifully well written, very, very clear. I think that if I were recommending this pattern, in order for those dots to really shine as the most sort of dramatic element in the shawl, I think probably a single color would be preferable. But it is yet another version of that very popular short scarf or small scarf genre that people seem to be loving to make and loving to wear. So I think it should definitely be something that you consider, particularly if you like a longer tie. I kind of experimented in front of the mirror with different ways of tying it. I think that I don't really see myself as a floppy bow person, but it looked kind of cute, and I think the ties are definitely long enough that you could have some sort of bow on it if that was someone's preference, which definitely is a different look, and I could see kind of with, like a navy blazer or jacket, or even a jean jacket, and like a little red scarf kind of with the bow to the side. I think that could be really cute. So it definitely has some features that are different from like the Sophie scarf or some of the others, and might be fun for people to look at. So that is my one and only FO. And again, the reason for the podcast today, even though I don't have a ton to show, but I definitely wanted to let you guys see it so that I could gift it to her. Okay. So what else? So I'm still slowly, and slowly is really the operative word here, slowly working on my Woodlands Whisper Shawl. It is a pattern created by Gabi Fontana for Mayak Yarns. I'm not doing it in Mayak. I'm doing it in Purl Soho Linen Quill, which I have tons of. I did make one of the half and half triangle wraps. It took a long time. I mostly enjoyed it. I ended up giving it to my sister. I don't know if she actually wears it, but it is definitely a labor of love. I had yarn to make a lot more of them, and I just, for whatever reason, have not cast any on. So when I saw this pattern, and I apologize, I can't remember which podcaster or person, or maybe it came up on Instagram, there was something very classic about it. It's done in 2 colors. It is a pretty simple pattern. Again, the geometric sort of dots, which I am drawn to, I like. And the 2 colors I'm using, honey pink and fresh nutmeg, are definitely, in my universe, very, very, very much neutrals. So this is what the shawl will look like. You can see how it reads as sort of this very classic style. I am not loving the process of this, and I will talk about why that might be. But I do think if I stick with it and just pick it up when I can and do, the 8-row repeat, even if I just do that, I will eventually get to a piece that I love and can wear. And one of the things that I'm imagining for this shawl is that I will do it, I have a lot of yarn, I will do it very, very large if I can sustain my interest. And it is so light and lightweight that to me, this would be the perfect shawl to put in a bag when traveling, to use both, on planes, but also just to have like an extra piece that you could sort of wrap around as needed. In the summer, it would certainly be perfect, but it could even be, sort of another layer in a colder climate. So again, not my usual bright colors, but it's very soft, and I think it would be a very pretty feminine wrap. I just have to keep going. So why am I not loving it? Well, I am a bright color person, and it gives me joy to look down and see these neon yellows and bright pinks and all of that. So that is part of it. But I think the other part is really that you are dealing with 4 rows in one color and then 4 rows in the additional color. So every other row you're having to make sure to twist the yarns. The yarns are getting very tangled. And so there is a period of time every time I pick it up that I feel like I'm having to untangle it. And if I knit for a while, there's a period of time again where I have to separate out the 2 colors, make sure. And it's not a big deal, but when I have so many other projects that don't involve that extra level of sort of annoyance, those are the ones I'm gonna pick up. So I think that has a lot to do with it. It's easy, the pattern is easy. Because it's 8 rows and the 2 colors, I don't quite have it memorized, so I am having to look, which, maybe if I focused, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, where you have a pattern, that if you put in some time, you could actually memorize it and, like, as an actor would say, get off book. but it's not coming so easily that you're just naturally memorizing it. And one of the issues of being a non-monogamous knitter, as I am obviously, is that sometimes patterns are so similar that you second guess yourself. For example, I have 2 patterns that I'm working on now. I'm actually going to show, am I going to show both of them? I think I am. And one of them, the first stitch that you add, that you come to, is a make one right, and then the second one is a make one left. In the other pattern, the first one is a make one left, and the second one is a make one right. And because I'm going quickly back and forth between these 2 projects, I do have to sort of ground myself in the pattern and remind myself, oh, this is the one where the right increase comes first, or this is the one where the left increase comes first. And so if I were just monogamously knitting, that would obviously be smoother too. Okay, so that brings me to my next whip, which I have shown before. And it also brings me to a little conversation about gift knits. So this is Skeinanigans Northeasterly blanket, and I am making it exclusively out of Koigu minis, or Koigu Fingering. And the Koigu minis are, it's called like KPPPM. I don't know what that stands for. It's very sort of quick color changes, as you can see. And I apologize, this is a holy mess with a multiple amount of ends to weave in, which have not been attacked. But I'm going to hold it back, and there are these beautiful rows of this chevron pattern. It's very straightforward, 2-row repeat, lovely. There is something, I can't even describe the squishiness of this texture because it is done on small needles. Let's see if I can read. These are a 2.75 or a size 2 needle. So it's done on a very tight gauge, and it has this incredibly squishy, lovely feeling. To me, this is going to be, you know, the perfect sort of legacy baby blanket. Which brings me to sort of an issue that I'm realizing about gift knits, and that is that I have so many single skeins of yarn, and often part of the joy of knitting is painting with yarn. I literally enjoy taking this from that and this and just sort of seeing how the colors play. But that means that when I have something to gift, like a baby blanket, they are often bright and wild with color. And someone close to me is expecting a baby, and I just had this spidey sense that that would not be their style. So I created a document with questions. Tell me if you like pastels for babies, or brights, or black and white, or if you prefer neutrals or jewel tones. Tell me if you like sort of classic one color or stripes versus sort of more patchwork or scrappy looking projects. And they were very excited to fill all this out, and she had very clear ideas, as I knew she would. And basically her preferences are very traditional and classic and sort of one color, maybe stripes or polka dots or something. So, and the color range was pretty small, like pink, you know, navy blue, light blue, you know, depending on gender, and I will wait to find out what the gender is because she doesn't know yet. But it did make me realize that the project that I might start, because it sort of feeds my desire to play with color, is not exactly the gift that she would be most happy receiving. And so that is something I'm definitely having to balance, and will probably, shockingly, since I have so much yarn, we'll have to buy yarn for this project just so that I have the ability to create something that I think she'll really, really love. But that brings me back to something like this, which I think I know certain people who would absolutely see this as, you know, really extraordinary. But this will not be gifted to that person because this has a very different sort of feeling than I think she is imagining for her new baby. So again, just please down below sort of put your thoughts about gift knitting. Do you sort of make things and then sort of find the right person for it? Or do you very much sort of get input from people about their style or what they want? And is there ever a conflict? Before I move on from this gorgeous, I think gorgeous blanket, I just want to talk a bit about the needles. These are the old signature needles, which I know a lot of people have and talk about. These are super, super sharp. And I have loved this length. It's a very short length for a project like this that, you know, is done in these little narrow strips. And as many of you have already heard, Koigu has purchased or made a deal with Signature, and they are going to be producing them. And I don't know if they're going to be using these like absolutely gorgeous materials and if they're going to have the same colors and the same tips and look the same way, but I'm really excited to see what they do with it, because I think when Signature went out of business, it was a real loss to the knitting community, because it does fill a niche that a lot of other sort of yarns that needle companies, don't have. Okay, so that is the second whip that's been sort of getting some love, although it may be put aside now that I'm certain it's not for this person and their baby. And then the third is sort of a roundabout saga of my sweater. So I don't knit a lot of garments. I do make sweaters. I've made sweaters for myself. I made the Ooey Gooey last year for Rhinebeck and wore it to Rhinebeck, which was fun. I think I wore my Felix cardigan on the podcast and talked about how cozy it is, but also how ridiculously, you know, it doesn't stay on my shoulders. It doesn't fit, so I don't wear it out of the house really. And so I guess I sort of have a love-hate relationship with garments. I mean, because I like knitting to be stress-free, to me, clothing adds stress. Like, it has to fit. It has to get over my head. It has to be wearable. It has to, you know, feel comfortable, but also look flattering and all these things. And I guess that's reason one why I've sort of shied away from it. But reason two is climate. You know, being a knitter who lives in Texas, there was not a need for heavy woolen garments, and it was easy to just, you know, knit smaller projects or knit gifts, which were generally smaller projects for people who lived in colder climates. But as I am embarking on this huge life change and move, I will need warmer clothes and I will need big cozy sweaters. So I have packed away, as I've talked about, most of the yarn, but I did have a sweaters quantity in my redesigned project bag. This is number 10. Lots of people show these. They have this cool design. And I had just sort of stuck a pattern and yarn in there thinking, you know, if I get motivated, that would be something I could do. And the pattern was the, what was it? the Amy sweater by Petite Knit. It was a big turtleneck. It looked super cozy. The way the sweater is constructed, you know, you just sort of start this neckline and then there's raglan shaping, and then you would pick up later and do this big sort of turtleneck. So many things I did wrong. One, I said I was just going to measure my gauge after I got started. But as I was measuring the gauge, it was on the needles. So I think it wasn't, you know, as wide and easy to sort of read the gauge as it might have been, which, you know, is a rookie mistake. And I consider myself still a rookie garment knitter since I don't do that often. Second, I could not wrap my head around how wide the opening was. And I kept looking at pictures and trying to read other project notes on Ravelry. I couldn't find anything. I think ultimately, in hindsight, it was a gauge issue and that I was somehow so off gauge that this opening was ridiculously huge. But again, if I had had more confidence, more experience, maybe I would have known that I could have pulled it all in with, you know, a smaller size needle and it, you know, it would have all worked. I don't know. But I did end up pulling it out because I was just freaked out that I was going to keep knitting and putting effort into something that was not going to come to fruition with any result that I was happy with. So then I decided, I'd heard a lot recently about really simple sweater patterns. Lots of people, I think, Amber, Lovely Yarn podcast, and I think it was Amber and maybe someone else had been posting sort of beginner friendly sweater patterns. And I thought maybe I just need to do a sweater where there is some video support so that if I do have a question, I'm not just torturing myself without having answers, but that I do have an awareness of like, I'm either on the right track or I'm not on the right track, right? So I cast on for the Step-by-Step sweater by Florence Miller, which I'd been hearing a lot about. I didn't love the pictures of the sweater, so I wasn't like motivated. But then when I realized there were two options for the neckline, and one was a funnel neck, which was similar to a turtleneck look, I thought, okay, well, I can make that work. I loved the gauge that I was getting for these two yarns together. This is Kelbourne Woolen Scout in Meadow Heather and Rowan Kidsilk Haze and Jelly. And if you can see, this is definitely like a bluey green, and this is a very sort of scummy green, yellowy green. And together, I think they are absolutely stunning. And they remind me of a sweater I owned many years ago when I was like 15 and went on a trip to Europe and had cash to spend that my parents had given me, but I was too afraid that I'd run out of money, so I didn't spend any of it until the last stop, which was London. And then I had extra money, so I bought these two turtleneck sweaters, and one was, in my memory, a very similar color to this green, which is not a color I normally gravitate towards, but I wanted something sort of different in my wardrobe than like pinks and blacks. And I really, really love this. And I just love the fabric. It feels like exactly what I was hoping. I'm gonna try to make kind of the extra large size to hopefully have it be kind of extra wide and comfortable, but I'm hoping that it looks to me like the shoulders would be narrow enough that it isn't ridiculous like my Felix cardigan. But I'm really liking that so far. The process of knitting a sweater, just doing the raglan increases and then, you know, a row of increases, a row of knitting, it's not exactly as exciting to me as seeing, you know, even a scarf unfold and really, you know, you can just sort of see the pattern emerging and all of that. I don't know why. I guess I'm just so used to, that's my comfort zone, are these smaller projects. And also this is one color, and so there's no stripes, no color change, no whatever. So maybe my next venture into sweater knitting will involve color work again, or maybe some sort of texture like cables, I don't know. But for right now, I just want to see what this turns out like. And I will say, one of the things that Florence Miller does in her video support, there is a section on German short rows. And the section, so I was a little confused at first because I was going along and there were no German short rows, and it just was going right into, you know, splitting for sleeves and all of that. And I was like, wait, where are the German short rows? Well, for anyone who is interested, because the German short rows are seen as a more advanced beginner technique, she does the whole sort of start to finish of the sweater, and then there's like an addendum with the German short row explanation. And I realized that I have done them before, but I don't think I did them well, and maybe not even correctly. And I was really confused initially about like how that was all supposed to work. And so it was very helpful to be able to see and hear at the same time how she was explaining it. And I have a suspicion that I may go back to that again if I need a little bit more grounding or a reminder. This is what German short rows do, and this is how to do them. So that is my little mini update for today. I guess it ended up being not as short as I thought it would. I do have one sort of television rec. There is an interesting limited series on Netflix called Ripple. It does have some sad parts to it that could be triggering if people are dealing with life-threatening illness. But it is an interesting trope of sort of how strangers in a big city, this is New York City, come together and find connections and become really a family for each other. And there are some really beautiful moments, good writing, good acting. And if you like those limited series, and you might want to give this one a try, because I thought it was really lovely. Okay, folks, that is it. It looks like the sun is really trying to come out today, finally, after a really gray, warm, humid day. And it is Sunday, April 26th, if I haven't already said that. I hope you have a fabulous week, and I hope that you have a lot of fun getting to the next row. Thanks, and see you next time. Bye.